Predator franchise has been going strong on screen for nearly 40 years, but in the Predator universe, those sandaled fishnet-wearing intergalactic trophy hunters have been putting their strength to the test throughout human history, possibly even longer. Although the plot of most of the Predator movies, usually some variation of kill or be killed, is pretty straightforward, they also juggle multiple planets, settings, time periods, and protagonists. So to untangle it all before you see Predator Badlands, here is the complete Predator movie timeline in chronological order.
Yeah! Stick around.
The first movie in the Predator timeline is spread across 4 different time periods, so we're already off to a confusing start. Built like an anthology of Predator stories set at various points in history, Predator Killer of Killers is a uniquely ambitious take on the series that also serves as a great proof of concept for how well the Predator works in pretty much any human setting. Which is exactly what the Shield does by dropping a Predator right into Scandinavia in 841 AD, the earliest we've seen humans duking it out with the Yautja. Yautja is the canonical term for the alien hunter species, which we'll be using interchangeably with the term Predator because that's what most people know them as, and which honestly just kinda sounds cooler. Anyway, if you were to send yourself back in time for an ass-kicking, 9th century Scandinavia is a pretty good place to run afoul of some badass Viking berserkers to beat the shit out of you, so it makes sense that the Yautja would pick a fight back then and there. The Shield follows Ursa, a Viking matriarch seeking revenge against the leader of a rival clan who killed her father. As the saying goes, the best offense is a good defense, and Ursa's brutally aggressive dual wielding of protective gear gives a whole new meaning to the term Shield Maiden. However, after vengeance has been enacted against the rival clan leader, a Yautja hunter joins the fray. From there, the two trade punches, stabs, and bad vibrations with all the ferocity you'd expect in a Viking versus Predator showdown, which also serves as a great counter-argument to anybody who thought a Predator animated movie wouldn't go hard as hell. Ursa ultimately uses the hunter's own weaponry against him and seems to emerge victorious, but after briefly losing consciousness, she awakens in an alien setting to find herself held captive with a mysterious cellmate. Ursa was out longer than she realized, nearly 800 years actually, because this particular cellmate hails from Japan's Edo period. The second chapter of Killer of Killers, titled The Sword, tells the story of Kenji. Son of a samurai warlord, Kenji and his twin brother Kiyoshi were trained from a young age in martial arts, before eventually being pitted against each other in a fight to the death to determine who would be heir to the throne. Kenji doesn't go through with it and escapes into the shadows. Fast forward 20 years and Kenji is now a deadly shinobi, aka a ninja. Kenji attacks his brother's stronghold, dispensing with the guards almost without detection. Kenji and Kiyoshi pick up their fight where they left off 20 years earlier, and Kenji is seemingly victorious, but of course that is exactly when the Predator decides to crash the party. Kenji manages to escape by the skin of his teeth, only to be ambushed by his surprisingly not dead brother. The twins put their differences aside and their heads together and neutralize their invisible threat, though Kiyoshi doesn't survive the experience. Kenji's performance clearly proves to the Yautja powers that be that he's a prime candidate for abduction for reasons that we'll get to shortly. Between the events of the second and third chapter of Killer of Killers, another whole feature-length hunt takes place in the events of Prey. Dan Trachtenberg's 2022 stealthily titled sequel gave us our first glimpse of a pre-Schwarzenegger Predator movie. It's set in the Great Plains in the year 1719, following a young Comanche woman named Naru, played by Amber Midthunder. Though she's been trained as a healer, Naru would much rather be a hunter like her older brother Tabe. She sees some lights in the sky, which she takes as an omen that it's time for her to follow her true calling, and really, relatable. Who among us hasn't decided for a career change because they saw a UFO? Anyone? Anyway, Naru finds herself part of a search party for a member of her tribe who was carried off by a cougar. She treats his wounds with an herb that slows the bleeding by lowering his body temperature, which sure seems like it might have other uses for anyone being hunted by a creature that relies on thermal imaging to catch its prey. Naru and company go off in search of this cougar, which doesn't go very well. It kills one of them and knocks her unconscious. Naru wakes up back home, and even though her brother finally succeeds in killing this damn cat, she has noticed enough weird lights and unfamiliar footprints and gross skinless snakes that she suspects that something bigger and badder is still out there, so she goes hunting. Naru immediately falls into a bog, then gets ambushed by a bear, but then the bear gets ambushed by, you guessed it, the Predator! Naru gets away, runs into some friends, but then the Predator ambushes them too. She steps in a bear trap and gets captured by, you guessed it, French people! Her interpreter turns out to be a guy named Raphael Adolini, whose name will pop up a few more times in this video, even if he doesn't. He explains in so many words that in spite of the predator not having any fur, the fur trappers really want to catch it, and they're going to use Naru and company as bait. That goes about as well as you'd expect, and the predator, who Naru has nicknamed Pia Mupitsi after a giant owl that eats children in Comanche folklore, kills a bunch of dudes and then cuts off Raphael's leg. After escaping her captors, Naru treats his wound, or stump rather, with that same herb as before. In exchange, Raphael gives her his musket and teaches her how to use it. Jury's out on whether Naru's treatment would have actually saved Raphael's life. It lowers his body temperature enough that it makes him invisible to the predator, which unfortunately also makes him a bit of a tripping hazard. Tabe shows up and he and Naru fight the predator, but he gets killed and she books it. She catches up with the lead Frenchman and decides to give him a taste of his own medicine by using him as bait for the predator. Then she has a taste of her own medicine, literally, so she can be a cold-blooded killer, also literally. Lowering her body temperature with the herb, she manages to ambush the predator, shoot his mask off with the musket, and lead him into a trap. After a little roughhousing, Naru lures the predator into that same bog that she fell into and ultimately uses his own tech against him. He throws his high-tech homing spear at her, not realizing that she's tricked him to stand directly in the crosshairs of his mask's targeting computer, and the spear boomerangs around and kills him. Death by aim assist. Naru uses the predator's blood as war paint so they can make a sick poster for the movie, rips his head off, and brings it home as a trophy. She tells the tribe they need to move to greener, less bloodthirsty pastures, and everyone lives happily ever after. Unless you paid attention to the credits, which depict the events of the story as Comanche ledger art, but they add an additional final scene where 3 Yautja ships descend on Naru's tribe. Fast forward a few hundred years again, and we have the 3rd chapter in Killer of Killers, The Bullet. It's a major departure from every other entry in the franchise in that it's entirely focused on vehicular combat, namely aerial dogfights, which kind of seem like the Yautja equivalent of a fishing trip rather than the usual hunter's rite of passage. Set mostly during the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied Northern Africa in 1942, The Bullet follows John J. Torres. He's an aspiring pilot whose talents have unfortunately been relegated to the repair shop. An injured pilot returns from a mission with his plane badly damaged by an unidentifiable object lodged in his fuselage that was fired by some unknown attacker. After discovering that it is extremely responsive to high temperatures, Torres puts together that it's some sort of heat-seeking harpoon. He attempts to warn his squadron, but finds that they're out of range for radio communications, so instead he goes AWOL in a beat-up Wildcat to tell them in person. Initially, they don't take him seriously, but that changes real fast when the alien spacecraft starts ripping through the other pilots. Eventually, it's just Torres in his malfunctioning plane and his commanding officer who sacrifices himself to buy Torres some time. He figures out how to evade the predator by killing his engine and gliding, once again fooling that Yautja thermal vision. Torres lands a direct hit, but reveals himself in the process. He then leads the predator through an active combat zone, luring him into a barrage of anti-aircraft fire, which briefly seems to have done the alien hunter in. Of course, the Yautja ship resurfaces once again. As a final Hail Mary, Torres floods his engine with fuel and lets his plane get harpooned. He ejects himself at the last minute, right as the predator reels in its overloaded, highly explosive prey, which literally blows up in his face. Shortly thereafter, Torres is safe and sound at home enjoying a quiet night in his garage when he's interrupted by a loud rumbling sound, and unsurprisingly, another alien spacecraft appears to whisk him away. But we haven't seen the last of him quite yet. The very first Predator movie ever released, simply titled Predator because it was 1987 and you could just name a movie Predator and people would go see it because it sounded cool, is one of several Predator movies that take place roughly around the same time the movies themselves were filmed. This kind of makes sense if you think about how the Predator's whole thing is checking in on humanity here and there, seeing how much their combat abilities and technologies has evolved, and then dropping in to kick some ass. Anyway, Predator follows several hardened Vietnam War vets turned search and rescue operatives tasked with finding a downed helicopter in a dense Central American jungle. After various double crossings, the hero of the film, Alan Dutch Schaefer, aka Arnold Schwarzenegger, realizes he's been duped and he's been actually sent on a very different mission than the one he signed up for.
You sell some? So bull.
This plotline would have probably made a pretty cool movie on its own, but all of it stops mattering when an invisible killing machine slowly begins hunting this team of super badasses, despite their endless bravado, big guns, and lack of time to bleed.
I ain't got time to bleed.
Dutch once again realizes this is very much not the mission he signed up for, and he knows he needs to whip out every survival trick in the book to defeat this unknown, probably not of this planet foe. Anna, a guerrilla soldier captured by Dutch's team, tells Dutch that she'd heard local folk legends about a monster that would kill villagers in various gruesome ways during the hottest months of the year, taking their skeletons as trophies. Imagine finally getting some vacation days in August and your annual relaxation time in Central America is cut short by a huge invisible space lizard that jumps from a tree and puts your skull on his mantle. I guess there's worse ways to go. Anyway, realizing that machine guns and brawn and governors are no match for this futuristic interstellar killer, Dutch resorts to setting traps and using one of the most primitive hunting techniques of all time, covering himself with mud as camouflage. Dutch's plan works until his dirt suit washes off, at which point the Predator decides to reveal himself to Dutch as well so the two can fight to the death one-on-one.
You one ugly motherfucker.
Dutch severely injures the Predator with one of his traps, and instead of admitting defeat, the Predator uses his space watch to detonate, killing himself like a coward instead of just saying, "good game," or whatever. Like most great 80s endings, Dutch's helicopter rescue arrives and everyone lives happily ever after, and the Predator never bothered anyone again, until the next movie came out several years later. What is scarier than a thick jungle teeming with insects, animals, and a huge creature with a cloaking suit that is hunting down your team one by one? If you said Los Angeles in 1997, you would be right. Or at the very least, the creators of Predator 2 would probably agree with you. Released in 1990 but set 10 years after Dutch's encounter with the Predator, Predator 2 swaps an actual jungle with a concrete one, taking a few creative liberties on the way, like giving LA a fully functional underground subway system. Fun fact, the public transit line in Predator 2 is actually played by the San Francisco Bay Area's BART system, which was designed by Sid Mead, who you might know better for designing a bunch of the machines used to kill other extraterrestrials in another hit sequel, Aliens. Once again dropping himself into a conflict during a heatwave, the Predator interjects himself between an ongoing turf war between multiple gangs in the LA Police Department, headed by Lieutenant Michael R. Harrigan, played by absolute film legend Danny Glover, often known for portraying grizzled but empathetic cops who are too old for whatever they are presently dealing with at that time.
Too old for this.
While Predator 2 may be set 7 years after the movie was released, it doesn't really toy with the idea of presenting futuristic technology for the gangs or the LAPD to use against the Predator, instead opting to keep things pretty grounded in contemporary weaponry. However, seeing the Predator in an urban setting works as a stark contrast to the original film, even if the end results aren't quite as strong. Across various rooftops, apartments, tunnels, and subways, the Predator kills, beheads, and maims people who dare cross his path, sparing only a pregnant woman once he scans her and finds out she's carrying a child. After most of the rest of the cast winds up dead, dismembered, or all the above, the Predator and Harrigan wind up in a one-on-one fight. Harrigan maims the Predator, sending it into hiding to recover. After chasing the Predator to his ship in the depths of the city and finally killing him, Harrigan is greeted by a whole group of Predators. As a reward for murdering one of their friends, or perhaps some guy they didn't like that much, the Yautja present Harrigan with a gift. A musket engraved with Raphael Adolini's 1715, which, as you know, can be traced back to its origins in Prey. Pretty cool, huh? Turns out those Predators are just as good at collecting and preserving rare antiquities as they are at murder. I wonder how many vintage 1994 Kenner Predator action figures they still have in the packaging. Speaking of well-preserved collectibles, it's probably worth noting that one of the other prized trophies in the Predator ship is a xenomorph skull. At this point, Yautja had been fighting xenomorphs in the pages of Dark Horse Comics for a while, but Predator 2 confirmed their live-action counterparts existed in a shared universe, and sure enough, they'd cross paths on the big screen soon enough. We'll definitely come back to that. Though Killer of Killers would have been sufficiently kick-ass telling 3 standalone stories about Predator fights throughout history, the anthology culminates with a grand finale where Ursa, Kenji, and Torres awaken from cryosleep in the distant future, for them at least, on a Predator spacecraft outfitted with high-tech collars. Unsurprisingly, the language barrier, cultural differences, and a generation gap several centuries wide keeps them from immediately hitting it off.
Watashi migotos sakanadores?
Torres knows enough broken Japanese to sort of talk to Kenji, but before they can form an alliance, the trio is thrown into a massive gladiatorial arena. The head predator shows up and tells everyone that the collars they're wearing serve two purposes. One, they act as translators so everyone can understand his little speech about what the collars do. And two, they explode if the human captives won't do what the predators have brought them there to do, which is to fight to the death for the crowd's amusement. The prize for whoever's left standing is the honor of another fight to the death with the head predator himself, which is sort of like if you won The Price is Right, and the prize was getting to play The Price is Right again against Drew Carey. Which I guess would make for a cool story. Each of our heroes are given a weapon from their own respective culture. Ursa gets a big battle axe, Kenji gets a katana, and Torres gets a gun. Unfortunately, it's Raphael Adolini's musket again.
This isn't even from my century.
This is either a cruel joke, a hilarious mistake, or indication that human technology seems so rudimentary to predators that they can't tell the difference between an 18th century firearm and a 20th century one. Either way, Torres clearly drew the short straw. Ursa and Kenji hack and slash away at each other while Torres fumbles with the musket and tries to convince them that they should be working together instead of trying to kill each other. To spice things up, a huge alien creature is unleashed in the ring, eating one of its Yautja handlers in the process. It then swallows Torres whole, and in its stomach, he finds the handler's dismembered forearm complete with gauntlet. He uses the wrist blades to stab the creature from the inside while Kenji and Ursa attack from the outside. They eventually kill the thing, at which point it is pushed off stage by this Yautja hoverbike bulldozer thing, with Torres still stuck inside.
Guys, I'm still in here!
Kenji and Ursa resume their duel, but rather than fighting to win, Ursa just wants to die in battle so she can ascend to Valhalla and see her family again. Kenji refuses to kill her because it's against his code of honor, and also because he doesn't want to give the Yautja that satisfaction. Just as the Predator King is about to blow off their heads for not playing his little game, Torres shows up on the cool alien Zamboni jet ski and disables everyone's collar with the wrist computer that's still on that gross arm. Kenji and Ursa team up to fight the Yautja leader while Torres hijacks his ship, saving the day by flashing the leader with the ship's thrusters, but not before Kenji's arm gets sliced off with a well-aimed spear throw. Their getaway hits a snag when they're harpooned by the Yautja ground crew, but Ursa ziplines down the chain and cuts the other humans loose. The Predator King declares open season on Torres and Kenji's newly stolen ship, sending all of his loyal subjects after them. In the final shots of Killer of Killers, we see Ursa being taken back to her cryo chamber, and we get a glimpse at a few other leftovers the Yautja have been keeping in the back of the freezer. Naru, Harrigan, and Dutch, who you might remember from such hit films as Prey, Predator, and Predator 2. Will they play a part in another animated installment, or are they gonna pop up in Badlands? Or is this just a cool Easter egg? We're gonna have to wait and see. Almost a decade and a half after that xenomorph skull first popped up in Predator 2, we finally got to see these iconic rivals go at it on the big screen. At this point, there'd been a handful of AVP video games, dozens of toys, and enough comics that the Predator had actually gotten bored of xenomorphs and moved on to hunting other stuff like Batman and Tarzan. Unlike the comics and games, which mostly take place in space, where no one can hear you scream, and in the future, when everyone has pulse rifles and motion trackers, the movie opted to take place on Earth in 2004. Well, actually, it opens up with predators and aliens terrorizing some humans at a whaling outpost in 1904, but then it jumps ahead 100 years. Satellite imaging picks up some unusual heat signatures off the coast of Antarctica, and it comes to the attention of billionaire industrialist Charles Bishop Weyland, who discovers through further satellite recon that there's a giant pyramid thousands of feet below the surface. Partially because he's an eccentric billionaire, and partially because he's a terminally ill eccentric billionaire who's crossing stuff off his bucket list, Weyland organizes an expedition to go make scientific history by unearthing this incredible discovery in person. He assembles a crew of experts, including survivalist mountaineer Lex Woods. Real quick, it's worth pointing out that Charles Weyland's involvement throws a whole monkey wrench into the Alien canon. AVP is generally considered to be not canon, or at least only canon within the Predator franchise. It's implied that Charles Bishop Weyland's company would eventually merge into Weyland-Yutani, the evil conglomerate from the Alien franchise. Presumably Bishop, the artificial person from Aliens, takes his namesake and likeness from the company's founder. AVP also establishes the idea that xenomorphs have been on Earth for thousands of years, which is contradicted by Prometheus and Alien Covenant, but those in turn contradict Aliens by suggesting the xenomorph life cycle doesn't even require a queen. But I digress. Charles Bishop Weyland and company head to the South Pole and start exploring the mysterious pyramid, encountering the sort of stuff you would expect to see in a movie called Alien vs. Predator. Predators show up and kill some humans, and aliens show up and kill some predators. Then, eventually, Lex kills a xenomorph. which earns her the respect of one of the Predators, and they team up to fight the aliens together, which is generally in Earth's best interest. AVP's big revelation is that Predators have been coming to Earth for thousands of years, were once worshipped as gods, and are in fact the very same ancient aliens who taught humans how to build pyramids in the first place. Every 100 years, young Yautja warriors return to Earth and undergo a rite of passage where they must hunt xenomorphs to prove themselves. Where do they get the xenomorphs? Well, humans are placed in a sacrificial chamber to act as host for facehuggers. Where do they get the facehuggers? Well, there's a queen alien chained up in the basement. What happens if the Predators get overrun by aliens? Well, they nuke the whole thing from orbit.
It's the only way to be sure.
After Lex and her Predator pal defeat the alien queen, the Predator gives Lex a cool scar to prove that she's cool and good at killing xenomorphs, but it's a little bit premature because the queen isn't actually dead yet and she shows up at the very last minute. They eventually get rid of the big bug for good by chaining her to a metal water tank and knocking it into the bottom of the ocean. But our Predator friend is mortally wounded in the process. Surprise, it turns out a whole crew of Predators was watching all of this happen, and they deactivate their cloaking devices to reveal themselves to Lex. Upon seeing Lex's scar and discovering she's been labeled cool, they pick up the body of their fallen compatriot. No idea what happens to Lex after that. She's seen walking off to her snowcat, so presumably she just chills in Antarctica until help shows up. I mean, what else are you gonna do in sub-zero temperatures? Chill out, am I right? In the very final shots of Alien vs. Predator on board the Yautja ship, we see a chestburster emerge from the hero Predator's dead body, revealing a pair of Predator mandibles. And the credits roll. In the opening shots of Alien vs. Predator Requiem on board the Yautja ship, we see a chestburster emerge from the hero Predator's dead body, revealing a pair of Predator mandibles. And for some reason, the opening scene of AVP Requiem is a complete reshoot of the previous movie's final scene, but for even more baffling reasons, the platform the dead Predator's body is resting on is completely different. If that's the kind of inconsistency that bothers you in movies, it's probably best to ignore how the Predalien chestburster got in there in the first place. You would think that an advanced species that's been hunting xenomorphs for sport in a specialized facility for thousands of years would have some failsafe to avoid getting impregnated by facehuggers themselves. Or at the very least, one might assume a society with advanced thermal imaging technology would have some way to scan their fallen comrade's body after his field trip to the deadly parasite farm. After all, it's established they have thermonuclear measures in place to prevent xenomorph outbreaks on Earth, and they clearly understand the xenomorph life cycle and the danger of these creatures, so why the hell did they just bring this guy on their ship? Well, there is a very good explanation, because people would rather go see a movie where a full-grown alien-predator hybrid terrorizes a small town than one where it's preemptively neutralized thanks to sensible precautions. Of course, seeing a movie, in the literal sense, is tricky when it's as poorly lit and edited as AVP Requiem, so if you couldn't tell what was going on, you're not alone, and here are the finer points. The hybrid Predalien wreaks havoc on the Predator spacecraft, resulting in it crash landing on the outskirts of an isolated town in the Colorado Rockies. The Predalien and a small swarm of facehuggers survive the crash and commence terrorizing and/or impregnating the residents. Meanwhile, a Predator is dispatched to Earth to contain the situation, destroy the evidence his kind were ever there, and then deal with the xenomorphs and Predalien. Requiem is a bastard black sheep entry in both the Alien and Predator franchises for a bunch of reasons, but it sticks out from the rest of the Predator films in particular for being the only one where the Predators aren't there to hunt for sport. This guy's more like a cross between an animal control specialist and Winston the Wolf, the cleaner from Pulp Fiction.
I'm Winston Wolf. I solve problems.
Who, fun fact, inspired the film's directors to refer to him as the Wolf Predator. Anyway, the in-universe reason this movie is so dark is that a fight breaks out between extraterrestrials and a power plant, and in the process, power gets knocked out for the entire town. In space, no one can hear you scream, and in Gunnison, Colorado, nobody can see what the f anyone else is doing. Human characters run around trying not to get killed by an alien, a predator, or some combination thereof. During a fight, the Wolf Predator's plasma caster shoulder cannon gets knocked off, and he repurposes it as a pistol. Then that gets lost in the shuffle, and one of the Earthling characters grabs it. Wolf and the Predalien have a final showdown on a rooftop, and after they mortally wound each other at exactly the same time, a military jet swoops in and nukes the whole site from, well, not orbit, but, like the sky.
It's the only way to be sure.
A handful of survivors escape by helicopter, which then crashes, but then they're okay, and soldiers show up but promptly confiscate the plasma caster pistol. In the final scene, the alien technology is handed off to a mysterious woman who is revealed to be a member of the Yutani family. who was never heard from again because all plans for sequels to AVP Requiem were scrapped.
The world isn't ready for this technology.
Released in 2010, it's never specifically stated when the movie Predators takes place, which is understandable when you consider where it takes place. Predators was the first entry in the series that reversed the setting of battle, dropping the humans into an alien location. Literally, in fact, as the film begins with various humans waking up mid-parachute drop into the jungle of an unknown planet. After some initial hesitation, they join up to survive and work their way back to safety together, learning along the way that all of them have some sort of combat expertise background or a violent past. Mercenaries, prisoners, snipers, a yakuza, well, all of them except for one, who's a doctor, but more on him in a second.
I'm a doctor.
The group quickly realizes they have another thing in common. They're being hunted in a strange place where their makeshift compass doesn't work and the sun doesn't move like it should. Yup, that's definitely not Earth.
We're gonna need a new plan.
The ragtag crew of solo survivors turned Suicide Squad carefully avoids deadly booby traps and other things determined to eviscerate them in seconds.
That is really, really poisonous.
And soon enough, they're being hunted by other alien creatures. As you probably put together by now, or remembered from having seen this movie already, rather than hunt one kind of deadly human in their natural habitat, the Predators decided to spice things up by assembling a nice variety pack of deadly humans and turning them loose in unfamiliar territory. To quote Adrian Brody's character,
This planet is a game preserve. And we're the game.
our heroes soon come face to face with a predator who is being strung up as bait to lure them in to be killed by even more predators.
Run!
The sniper Isabel tells the group she heard of a conflict that went down between a similar creature in Guatemala in 1987 and essentially recounts the plot of the original Schwarzenegger movie, inspiring the survivors to come up with a plan to trap and kill their hunters.
It can be done. I can't do it alone.
Okay, so back to this movie's placement on the timeline. Dialogue in Predators references actual real-life Earth conflicts, meaning it could take place in the 2010s, but with its intentionally vague timing and setting, it's tough to place precisely. You could make 2.5 more Killer of Killer anthologies just showing how the human cast of Predators was assembled and put in cryosleep. Plus, how much time did the Yautja spend coordinating this whole thing? Did they have to find a weekend when all their friends were free and then make reservations for the planet? Did they have to stock up on plasma bullets? Did they do like a Costco run for whatever Yautja actually eat? It's ironic that they've released 8 movies with Predator in the title, and the only insight we have into what they actually prey on for sustenance is a throwaway line in Predator 2.
Seems he has a taste for beef.
Anyway, on the other hand, AVP Requiem seems to indicate that the Yautja have faster than light travel, so maybe Predators takes place the year it came out. In any case, it's a moot point because the timeline for most of the human characters in Predators comes to an abrupt end way before the credits roll. The gang meets up with Nolan, a soldier who was also airdropped onto this planet, but way before them, and he's been surviving here so long he's totally lost track of how much time has passed.
7 seasons, I think. What? 10.
Most of the crew gets picked off, including Nolan. Only the mercenary, the sniper, and the doctor are left, and surprise, the doctor is actually a serial killer.
Oh, shit.
Luckily, serial killers still work great as bait for predators, and after some infighting between warring predator clans, the remaining 2 human survivors hobble away from the final conflict into the night in search of a way off the planet and back to Earth, where the predators will hopefully never bother anyone again. Interestingly enough, the sniper character Isabel later shows up in the 2020 video game Predator Hunting Grounds. That's largely a multiplayer game, so story and lore isn't the main focus, but there are some in-game recordings that give some insight into the timeline. It's revealed that Isabel survived on the alien planet for a full year before finding her way back to Earth, where she's once again fighting the Predators. That game takes place in 2025, meaning that Predators might actually take place in 2024. Either way, its largely isolated story and lack of direct references in later films means that it doesn't really make any difference if you decide to watch it before or after 2018's The Predator. Speaking of which, this is a good time to pause and remind people that while the Predator timeline can occasionally be convoluted, the franchise's movie titles might be the most confusing thing about it. So far, we've had Predator, Predator 2, Predators, which has more than 2 predators in it, and 2018's The Predator, which despite its naming similarity to the 1987 Predator movie, actually has more than 1 predator in it as well, and shouldn't be confused with The Predators, a 2020 Pietro Castellitto movie, or the Nashville Predators, a Central Division hockey team. The Predator is actually directed by the first guy killed by the original Predator, Shane Black. As legend has it, Shane Black also did some rewrites on the original film and landed a small part in it as a favor from producer Joel Silver, who'd bought a screenplay from Black for another film that released in 1987, Lethal Weapon, which coincidentally featured 2 actors who would shortly thereafter appear in Predator 2, Danny Glover and Gary Busey, which makes some people think that Predator 2 is a Lethal Weapon prequel. Not that many people, but a few.
Too old for this shit.
Anyway, Shane Black's return to the Predator franchise opens with one Yautja spacecraft in hot pursuit of another. After taking some damage, the ship that's being chased opens a wormhole and manages to lose its pursuer. It emerges in Earth's orbit, and after the pilot jettisons himself in an escape pod, the ship loudly crash lands in the middle of a hostage exchange between a drug cartel and US Special Forces. US Army Ranger Quinn McKenna sees the whole thing happen and goes to investigate the crash. He finds some Predator gear, including a wrist gauntlet that he immediately puts on. Just then, the ship's owner shows up, or maybe not shows up since he's invisible, but he makes his presence known. Quinn's wrist gauntlet automatically launches defensive measures against the Predator, taking him out of commission, but not quite killing him. Just as shadowy government types arrive on the scene, Quinn escapes with a duffel bag full of Predator gear. Understandably, he heads straight to the nearest bar to pound some shots, and instructs the bartender to put the mask and gauntlet in the mail for him, and then he swallows the small orb, which he's figured out is a portable cloaking device. Quinn gets apprehended and subsequently questioned by government officials who want to keep him quiet about seeing an alien, so they label him a nutcase and lock him up with a ragtag group of other veterans who've made some trouble, including the Punisher, Theon Greyjoy, and Toad. The package was meant to go to Quinn's P.O. box, but since he's past due on payments, it gets dropped off at his home, where his neurodivergent son Rory proceeds to open it, tinker with the alien tech, and then wears the mask and gauntlet to go trick-or-treating, which subsequently results in a bully's house getting exploded. While that's happening, a lot of other stuff is going on. Casey Brackett, an evolutionary biologist played by Olivia Munn, is enlisted for top-secret science stuff at the secret facility where the Predator who crash-landed is being held.
Would you like to meet a Predator? Ha! Come on.
Lead scientist on this project is Sean Keyes, played by Jake Busey, who is canonically the son of the character played by Gary Busey in Predator 2, and who in real life is very obviously the father of the actor who plays his son in this movie. The Predator escapes, and so do Quinn and his band of kooky Spec Ops misfits. Meanwhile, the Predators who were chasing the ship in the beginning finally show up looking for their guy, and Quinn's misfits team up with Casey.
Casey, you with me?
From there, it's a game of cat and mouse, except instead of cats and mice, it's good military guys, bad military guys, regular dogs, regular predators, and a super jumbo-sized predator. In addition to trying to retrieve the Predator gear from the humans, the big bad Predator is also searching the galaxy for DNA that can be used to create stronger and smarter hunters. So after getting a glimpse of Rory's preternatural talent for figuring out Yautja technology and presumably also his anti-bullying methods with it, the bad Predators kidnap him. Quinn and his team pursue the Predator ship, kill the Predators, and rescue Rory in the process, losing several comrades along the way, but ultimately defeating the alien bad guys with their own weaponry, as one does. The Predator ends with Quinn obtaining the Predator Killer armor, which was apparently bestowed upon him by the Predators to even the playing field for future fights between humans and Yautja. It's unclear if we'll ever see this plotline continued, but one of the producers talked about the possibility of making it the start of a trilogy, but that seems pretty unlikely at this point. As bonkers as the ending of The Predator was, it almost got even weirder. An early draft of the script ended with Dutch showing up at the end to recruit Quinn into a war against the Predators, but Schwarzenegger allegedly declined. Alternate endings were filmed but never released, which would have included the return of both Ripley from Alien and an adult version of Newt, who originally survived the movie Aliens, only to die right before Alien 3, which, for the timeline's sake, would have kind of made things even more tumultuous than they already are. The prevailing theory is it would have been revealed that those space portals the Predator ships travel through are also capable of time travel, which is... maybe Predator doesn't also need to be Terminator? Whatever the plans for the present-day corner of the Predator timeline were, they've been backburnered so the franchise can do a different kind of time travel, exploring the ancient past and the distant future. All of which brings us to Predator Badlands, the brand new entry in the Predator film franchise, where a Predator is finally the protagonist. His name is Dek, and with the help of a synthetic humanoid torso named Thea, created by Weyland-Yutani, Dek takes on an entire alien planet of grotesque creatures and hulking monstrosities waiting to pulverize them or devour them whole or, I don't know, do something to them. Predator Badlands takes place on a planet called Kalisk in an undisclosed year, which was very much deliberate. In fact, Predator Badlands director Dan Trachtenberg recently told IGN that they decided to set the film well into the future rather than squeeze in between existing events in both the Predator and Alien timelines, also being conscious that catching up on canonical events in sprawling cinematic universes can sometimes feel like homework, as evidenced by how long this video is that you're almost done watching, I swear. However, Weyland-Yutani was first introduced in the original 1979 Alien, which takes place in the year 2122, 104 years after the events of The Predator, so at the very least we are looking at a pretty significant time jump from the rest of the Predator movies. Time will tell how much it will reference previous Predator or Alien films, if it even does that at all, but either way, it is an exciting time for lifelong Predator fans, and we can't wait to see where this series heads next, and how many heads it's going to rip off along the way. Additionally, Alien Romulus director Fede Alvarez has stated that he would love to see a xenomorph pop up in a Predator movie as a surprise. Fede isn't directing the Romulus sequel, and Trachtenberg has stated that there is not a xenomorph in Badlands despite its big roster of creatures, but it's starting to feel like it's just a matter of time before we see an Alien and Predator rematch popping up in a feature film. And so there you have it, a complete timeline of every Predator movie leading up to Predator Badlands. Of course, there are lots more Predator stories out there, spanning comic books, video games, and more, for you to uncover in case you've ever wondered what it would look like if the Predator tried to kill the Terminator. Like the actual one, not just Schwarzenegger. Judge Dredd, or Wolverine, or even those spunky teenagers in Riverdale. Seriously, they've done Archie vs. Predator twice now. But for the movies, you've got a pretty solid grasp of the hunting patterns of these extraterrestrial killing machines and the various settings they love to drop in on. So, what's your favorite Predator movie, and which historical or futuristic settings would you like to see the Predator tear to pieces next? Sound off with a clicky noise in the comments below, and for all things Predator, keep that 3-dotted tactical laser sight locked on IGN.
Get to the chopper!